Indifference hurts. Being ignored by someone we consider important can trigger a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, frustration, and even a deep sense of rejection. But why does it affect us so much? What lies behind this emotional pain? Carl Jung teaches us that the human psyche is shaped by deep, often unconscious patterns. Among them is the fundamental need for belonging and recognition. Since ancient times, being excluded from the group posed a survival risk. In the modern world, this instinct translates into the fear of rejection, the anxiety of not being validated by others. But here's something interesting. What happens when we respond differently to indifference? What if, instead of desperately seeking the attention of those who ignore us, we use that moment for something deeper and more transformative? The method I propose here is not about revenge or manipulation, but rather about self-awareness and inner strength. It is based on three fundamental psychological principles: detachment, projection, and self-affirmation. Jung stated that much of our suffering comes from attachment to how others perceive us. When someone ignores us, our first reaction is to wonder why. Did we do something wrong? Do they look down on us? Are we being punished? These questions lead to anxiety because we place our self-worth in someone else's hands. The first step in this method is to change how we perceive rejection. Instead of seeing indifference as a reflection of our worth, we should view it as a mirror. It reflects more about the other person than about us. When someone chooses to ignore us, that behavior is a reflection of their own psyche, emotions, and internal struggles. Projection. What does indifference reveal about you? Jung teaches us about projection. What deeply affects us in others often mirrors something within us. If being ignored hurts so much, it may be because, at some level, we have an unconscious fear of being insignificant. Perhaps this indifference touches old wounds, experiences of abandonment or rejection that haven't been fully processed. The second step in the method is to ask yourself what this situation reveals about you. Instead of focusing on the other person, turn inward. Why does this bother me so much? What memories or old feelings does this experience awaken? Is this person truly ignoring me, or is it just my interpretation? When we bring these questions into awareness, the power of indifference over us begins to fade. The final part of the method is redirecting your energy. Instead of investing time and emotions trying to regain the attention of someone who ignores you, channel that energy into yourself. Learn to value yourself independently of external validation. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." True emotional security comes from self-awareness, not from the attention of others. By applying these three principles, something fascinating happens. In many cases, the person who was ignoring you senses the shift and starts paying attention again. This happens because when we stop seeking, we no longer radiate neediness. We begin to exude self-confidence. And that is magnetic. Now that you understand how detachment, projection, and self-affirmation can transform your response to indifference, let's address a crucial point: the reverse effect of indifference. There is a psychological phenomenon known as psychological reactance. It refers to our tendency to want something back when we feel like we're losing it. In other words, when you stop seeking someone's attention, that person may start to feel your absence and want to regain your attention. This happens because, in a way, human relationships work like a mirror game. If someone senses that you're desperate for attention, they feel they have control over the situation. And often, this makes them lose interest. But when you detach and show that you're fine without their attention, the balance shifts. The person begins to realize that maybe you have something valuable they're ignoring. This effect is not about manipulation, but about showing that your energy is not available to those who don't value it. It subtly communicates that you have a sense of self-worth and don't depend on others' approval to feel good about yourself. However, there's an important point. The person ignoring you won't always come back, and that needs to be accepted. The truth about indifference. What does it really mean? Not all indifference is a test, a power play, or an unconscious desire for attention. In some cases, the person is simply not interested in maintaining a connection. And that's okay. Here lies one of Jung's greatest lessons: accepting reality without emotional distortions. Often, we try to force a reconnection because our ego refuses to accept that we've been discarded. But do we really want the attention of someone who deliberately ignores us? True detachment doesn't mean waiting for the other person to come running back, but being at peace with any outcome. If they come back, great. If they don't, you've already reconnected with yourself and moved on. Throughout life, we all experience moments of rejection and indifference. The key difference between those who suffer excessively from it and those who grow from the experience lies in how they interpret and react to these situations. If you see indifference as an attack on your personal worth, it becomes an emotional burden. But if you view it as a sign to redirect your attention to yourself, it turns into an opportunity for growth. Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about others can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves. If being ignored hurts, it means there's something inside you that needs to be examined. Maybe an unconscious fear of not being good enough. Maybe an excessive need for external validation. Whatever it is, this pain is an invitation to look within and heal something that has long needed attention. Instead of insisting on being noticed, ask yourself, am I noticing myself enough? Does my self-esteem depend on others' attention? What do I gain by freeing myself from this need? This shift in perspective takes the power out of the other person's hands and puts it back in yours. And the most interesting part is that when you start to truly value yourself, others begin to see that value too. There's a fundamental principle in human interactions. People respond to the energy you emit. If you project desperation for attention, people are likely to pull away, as neediness can be overwhelming. But if you radiate confidence, presence, and authenticity, you naturally attract healthier and more respectful connections. This doesn't mean pretending not to care. The idea here is not to play a power game, but to learn to live fully, regardless of how others behave. When someone ignores you, see it as a sign to invest your energy where it is truly valued. After all, why spend your time trying to earn the attention of someone who clearly doesn't want to give it? True emotional freedom comes when you realize you don't need anyone to validate your worth. And that is the most powerful point of this method. When you stop seeking external approval, you start attracting more authentic and reciprocal relationships. The way we deal with indifference says a lot about our level of emotional maturity. People who rely too much on others' approval tend to feel lost when ignored. On the other hand, those who have developed a strong sense of identity don't see indifference as a threat, but rather as a natural filter. If someone doesn't want to be around, it's a clear sign that this relationship shouldn't be a priority. Carl Jung emphasized the need for individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, free from others' expectations and projections. This process involves deep self-understanding and emotional independence, freeing us from the need to be accepted by everyone. If someone ignores you, take it as an opportunity to evaluate your own reactions. Do you feel anger or sadness? This may indicate an emotional wound that needs healing. Do you feel the need to get that person's attention? This could be a reflection of insecurity and a need for external validation. Do you accept the situation and move on? That's a sign of emotional maturity and self-sufficiency. The key is to use these experiences as tools for growth. If indifference hurts, instead of getting lost trying to regain someone's attention, turn inward and ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? Often, the best response to indifference is silence. This doesn't mean ignoring back in a passive-aggressive way, but rather understanding that not everything deserves your energy. When you respond to indifference with silence and serenity, you send a clear message. You respect yourself enough not to beg for attention. Ironically, this may make the other person realize your worth, but more importantly, it means you're putting yourself first. By not reacting impulsively, you maintain your dignity and show that your self-esteem is not for sale. At the end of the day, the essential question is, does this person even deserve my attention? Not every connection is worth the effort to maintain. If someone chooses to ignore you, that's valuable information. Maybe they simply don't have space for you in their life, and insisting will only bring more suffering. Jung said, "What you resist persists." In other words, the more you try to force a situation, the more it becomes an obstacle in your life. Sometimes, the best choice is to accept and move forward. True strength is not in fighting for attention, but in knowing when to step back with dignity. One of the greatest transformations we can experience is realizing that we don't need anyone's attention to feel complete. The belief that we are only valuable when noticed and recognized is one of the biggest misconceptions of the human mind. It makes us dependent on others to feel good, leaving us vulnerable to any sign of indifference. Carl Jung teaches us that true individuation happens when we stop seeking our identity in the eyes of others. Instead of asking, "Why is this person ignoring me?" the more important question is, am I giving myself the attention I deserve? Is my self-esteem tied to external approval? What happens if I simply accept this situation and move on with my life? True detachment comes when you realize that other people's behavior does not define your worth. You can be ignored and still be an amazing person, full of qualities, with so much to offer the world. Here's an interesting fact. When you stop desperately seeking someone's attention, that person often starts noticing your absence. This isn't magic. It's just a natural reflection of human psychology. When you show self-sufficiency and detachment, you become more attractive and interesting. People can sense when you're no longer emotionally dependent on them, and that often sparks curiosity and respect. But the real goal isn't to make the other person notice you again. The true lesson is realizing that you don't need that attention in the first place. If they come back, great. If they don't, you've already learned to live without that validation. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Silence, detachment, and self-sufficiency are your greatest strengths. When you stop forcing connections, life naturally brings the right people your way. To recap, the method for dealing with indifference consists of 3 key steps. Detachment. Stop seeking external validation and understand that indifference says more about the other person than about you. Self-awareness. Ask yourself what this situation reveals about your own insecurities and fears. Self-affirmation. Instead of wasting energy trying to regain someone's attention, invest in yourself and move forward. If someone ignores you, see it as life's natural filter. True connections don't require excessive effort to exist. And remember, when you value yourself, the world around you responds to that energy. Be your own source of recognition, and you will never again be a prisoner of someone else's indifference.